Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome to NerdKO episode 5. Today we have some interesting segments for you. We're going to talk a little bit about WTF games. Games that you're like, what's going on? The weirdest, just strangest games you ever played. And some of them are strikingly good games. They're great games, but they're just really weird.
Right, not bad, just weird.
Right.
Yeah. So after we get done with WTF games, we're going to follow it up. We're going to talk about Netpix. That would be like from me, Muzz, and Sleazy, like our top 2 picks for Netflix right now that you should be checking out.
Yeah, something that's on instant queue that you can watch as soon as you watch this video.
Yep.
And then you can comment and tell us whether our taste sucks or not.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go into some games, our favorite reboots or remakes of other games. Recently, the announcement of Flashback, Quest for Identity, Ubisoft is remaking it, and I was so excited about it. We just decided we would talk about our other favorite remakes and reboots.
Yeah, there's actually quite a few. Like, you wouldn't think that, and when you start looking them up, there's actually a lot out there.
Right, yeah, so some great games that we want to talk about.
Yep, so let's go ahead and get to it.
All right, so now we're going to talk about some of our favorite reboots or remakes of games. Sometimes that's a very fine line, the definition of reboot and remake. I say we just combine it into one segment and make it easy for everyone.
Right.
So we're going to do 3 each. What's your first?
My first one, since we're doing 3 each, I'm going to go ahead and say Doom 3. When this came out, it was actually an interesting fact. It was the first video game I think I ever reviewed online back in 2005 or something like that.
Yeah.
The original Doom obviously was an instant classic when it first came out, and the Doom 3 reboot was incredible. The only beef a lot of people have with it was that you're this incredibly resourceful space marine, and yet you can't find a roll of duct tape to put your flashlight on your gun. Right. You're just constantly switching between terror and actually being able to see what you're doing. So yeah, I'll say.
Which I think was meant just to heighten the fear and the tension in the game, but it wasn't a great gameplay mechanic.
Right, and the graphics were gorgeous too.
Oh,
Whenever you'd seen it was amazing.
That was actually the first game I ever played. Like, I got a PC and bought my first PC games because I was always a console and still am always a console gamer, but that was one of the first PC games I ever got and really played. So yeah, a beautiful game, especially for its time. I want to talk about Silent Hill Shattered Memories.
Yep.
I think one of the coolest and most inventive remakes I've ever played. They kept it scary. Mm-hmm. They kept it, just like edge of your seat oriented. Right. They gave you a lot of really good puzzles, but they took away any kind of fighting system for the game. There's no guns, you don't have a stick, you don't hit anything with anything. When the enemy comes, you run like hell. And I think that's just scary, See,
I do remember that being a really terrifying. I'm kind of ashamed to say, I'm a big Silent Hill fan, but I never got to finish them. But one of the things I did like about it, though, was that it kind of did a personality profile at the beginning of the game. Kind of did like a psych profile to kind of figure out. And I think, if I remember right, the game would adapt depending on the choices you made or how you answered questions. I think they even give you like a Rorschach test at some point.
Yeah, and the cool thing about it was it used all these different gameplay mechanics that you've never been, never been introduced to in a video game, like using your cell phone to take pictures of stuff, and the first creepy cell phone moment is like you're in that little park and you hold your cell phone up and there's a little ghost girl on the swing and it just sends chills up your spine, or you use your phone that first time and you call someone and it rings and you hold your Wii remote up to your ear.
Do remember that.
And your daughter answers, she goes, "Daddy, help me," and you're like, "No!" It's like the creepiest thing ever. So I thought that game was just really phenomenal and one of the best video game remakes I've ever played. Yeah. What's your next one?
My next one is actually stepping back in history a little bit. I'll say Double Dragon Neon. Because I love the original Double Dragon, and for me, even back then, I think that was one of the first times I really realized that comedy in video games is a totally real thing. Because the first time that chick gets punched, in the stomach, and they just kidnap her, it was unintentionally hilarious, and I'm glad they recreated that sequence in Double Dragon Neon.
And that, I'm not keen on downloading games. We all know that about me.
Right.
But there are those occasional games that are, they're really good. They're not $60 games. They're not something that's ever going to be released on disc. Right. So you got to download them. And I downloaded that one just because I was such a huge fan of the Double Dragon arcade game back when I was a kid. And I played it so much and I thought this one looked cool. And it did not disappoint. It was a really well done game.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So what's your next one?
Oh, I think I want to go, speaking of downloadable games that you have to download, one of the best investments I ever made on Xbox Live Arcade was Perfect Dark 64.
Oh, yeah.
And it's hard to call it a remake. It is a remake, but it is the exact same game.
Right.
It's the same game, but it's got this 1080p overhaul, and all the textures are different, and everything's beautiful, but it's got that same fantastic gameplay engine. They didn't change a thing.
And you don't need an expansion pack.
Not at all, no. But if you look at it and you do a side-by-side comparison of Xbox Live Arcade and Nintendo 64, it's night and day.
Oh yeah,
It really, and what I tell people is, it lives up to the memory of the game. You have this memory of how amazing it looked, but then you go back on your 64 and you play it, and you're like, oh, it's so foggy and
so
blurry,
painful. How did I
because
like
we're
this?
spoiled by today's graphics.
Yeah.
But this game lives up to the memory. It makes that game look as good as you remember it.
Right.
And that's one of the things I really love most about Perfect Dark 64.
It's cool to have the nostalgia preserved, I guess.
Yeah. And I mean, I put so much time into beating it on every difficulty, and just I never even did that on the 64. Just outstanding game. If you haven't downloaded it, it's the best investment you can make on Xbox Live Arcade. Go ahead.
Okay, final one I'll say, speaking of nostalgia, is the Mortal Kombat reboot. Like, seeing Mortal Kombat really go back to its roots and be a competent fighter again was really incredible. Because there have been kind of this string of lackluster Mortal Kombat titles. It's not that they were completely horrible, but just people never really played those games for the stories. You played it for the difficulty in pulling off the moves, you wanted the fatalities, you wanted the brutality, and then on top of it, they take all these disparate characters that have been introduced over like a dozen Mortal Kombat games, and they actually tie it together into a somewhat cohesive story, which is incredible.
Well, the thing about this one for me was I really lost interest in the Mortal Kombat franchise after it went 3D. I'm talking Mortal Kombat 4 way back. Right. And Mortal Kombat's the game that got me back into gaming when I was on active duty at Fort Sam Houston, and these guys got me into Mortal Kombat. And when I came home, I got back into gaming, and it was the game that pulled me in. I got Mortal Kombat 2 on a Super Nintendo. I'll never forget it. Yeah, and I loved it.
I remember that.
And then I played them, and I played them, and I played them, and then 3 came out, and Ultimate came out, and I loved them, and then 4 came out, and I was disappointed. And I've been disappointed ever since until this game came out. Yeah. And it totally pulled me back, and it made me feel like I was playing an original Mortal Kombat game again, and I longed for that feeling for a long time.
Oh, this thing, I agree. Like, I think it kind of crushed it at 3 Ultimate.
And you had the combos and everything. That's what really set 3 apart from like 2 and 1, and it added a new gameplay mechanic to it with all these great and I don't know what happened between 3 and 4. I guess when they decided to go 3D, I just lost interest. Yeah. Because it didn't feel like a 3D game. It wasn't Virtua Fighter. It wasn't Soul Calibur.
Right.
It's Mortal Kombat. It's a 2D fighter. And it didn't, I never thought it carried over to 3D very well. And I didn't like Deception or any of them.
But completely redeemed whenever they did this last reboot. Yeah. Just amazing. If you haven't played, it's probably, I think it's relatively cheap now to...
I don't even know what it's running right now. But
I would think 2030. I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, check it out.
Okay, so my last one, and I think this is easily one of the best remakes ever done, Resident Evil 1 on the GameCube. I mean, suffice to say, the Wii and the GameCube have the definitive Resident Evil collection. Especially if you have a Wii, because you have 0, which is exclusive to Cube, 1, 2, 3, Veronica 4, Umbrella Chronicles, Dark Side Chronicles, and I mean, it's just this huge, amazing story. But that remake of 1 is what really set the GameCube collection into motion for me. It's beautiful. They rebuilt the entire environment, a fully polygonal 360-degree environment. They redid the voice acting.
You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right.
They gave you gameplay mechanics you didn't have in the first one. But it introduced a melee system where you could stab the zombies or shock them. And it did things that it had never done. And then on top of that, it was just breathtakingly beautiful for its time. And even by today's standard, it doesn't look bad.
No, not at all. And the thing I loved about that remake was I love the atmosphere that it brought, because I love the real-time lighting effects whenever lightning would flash into the windows and stuff like that. But there are 2 standout moments for me from the Resident Evil remake that I love. One is the introduction of Crimson Heads, which basically took the old shambling, shuffling kind of zombie that you're used to, ramped up the speed tremendously, and in turn the terror, and kind of made that a really cool twist. And 2 is that infamous, the iconic dog through the window scene. They mixed it up on you, and I'm sorry, I'm going to spoil this because I just can't help myself. You're used to walking through that one hallway, and the dog jumps in,
and you're creeping through. You're waiting for it to happen,
and it never happens. And then later in the game, when you're coming back to the hallway, that's when it happens. And they knew you'd be looking forward to it. I'm sure.
And speaking of the Crimson Zombies, the ability to light them on fire so they won't come back.
Right.
And that was one thing you were like, oh, should I light this guy up? Can I come back and light? Do I have enough to do it? And I mean, it added that little element to the gameplay, and it just kept you nervous, and it made you,
definitely.
Just phenomenal game.
Yeah.
And that's it. So that's our favorite reboots, remakes for now. There are a ton of them. If you have one, leave a comment and let us know what you think. I think there are tons that we didn't talk about that are totally worth talking about, and maybe we'll come back to this segment and try it again some other time.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so for my Netpix, I'm going to go with TV shows. I'm going to start out with IT Crowd. It's a British comedy, and it's about two guys that work in an IT department, which happens to be a basement, and they get a boss who knows nothing about computers. It's absolutely hilarious. Probably one of the best comedies that you can get out of a show. You should definitely check it out. Okay, for my second show, I'm going to go with Being Human. And don't be fooled, there's two versions of Being Human on Netflix. Now, you can go with the American version, but we're going to go ahead and prefer you go with the UK version. It's a lot better. It's three characters. They happen to be a werewolf, a vampire, and a ghost. They're all trying to, live together, interact, and just be humans. And it doesn't always work out quite so well, but they form a great bond, friendship, and it turns out to be good, after when the series gets going. Stray away from the US until you're completely finished with the UK series. But that's my picks for Netpix. I hope you enjoy what the guys have to offer you next.
Alright, in typical NerdKO fashion, I thought I would do something a little bit nerdier. My two movie picks are actually documentaries. The first one I want to talk about is Jiro Dreams of Sushi. Now, I'll warn you, if you hate subtitles, this might not be the movie for you because the whole thing is in Japanese. And the thing is, it's, as the name implies, all about this one guy's dream to make the best sushi ever. Which, even if you're not into sushi and you watch this, it's just one of those things that kind of proves the principle that anybody who's passionate about anything, that passion really comes through very well on video. And if you watch this, it's kind of the story of Jiro and his family and how he's been making sushi by hand for something like 30 or 40 years. And he's just one of the most renowned chefs in the world. And it really is just a captivating thing to watch. A lot of fun, especially if you do like sushi. If you don't, you may want to try it after watching this because everything just looks super tasty and it's very well shot and edited. Alright, the next movie that I want to talk about is Indie Game Movie. Now, this is a really cool documentary. Now, in addition to Netflix, if you bought the Humble Indie Bundle about, I think it was like a month or two ago, you can actually get a copy of it there as well. They give like a full 1080p copy of it away with also the games that were included in that bundle. So that was kind of a nice pack-in. But the cool thing about Indie Game Movie is it follows the development of three of the just most successful indie games ever, and that would be Super Meat Boy, Fez, and Braid. Now, the thing that I really like about this film is it doesn't pull any punches. It really does give you kind of a harrowing inside look at what game development's like and really what a stressful ordeal it can be. A lot of people think that oh, I want to create a game because look how fun it must be, and there's all these new tools and that are available that people never could have dreamed of like 10-15 years ago if they wanted to make a game. But just because those tools are available doesn't mean it's inherently an easy process. And this film does an excellent job of illustrating just how many how much work goes into creating a game, and it really is, when I say harrowing, I'm not kidding, like it's this incredibly impactful experience for these people, for their relationships, for their finances, for their mental health in some cases. So if you have a chance to watch, Indie Game Movie, you should totally take it because it is an excellent film, especially if you're an aspiring game designer.
Alright, so my picks for Netpix, two movies that are on instant queue right now that you should definitely check out. First one would be The Signal. This is a phenomenal movie, and it's something I caught totally by accident. One day I'm going through, I'm like, I guess I'll just watch this movie. Turned out to be this amazing film. And it's just these people, and everywhere through like all electronic devices, radios, televisions, whatever, there's this signal being broadcast. And if you watch it, it just basically turns you into a raging psychopath. You don't know what's really going on. You don't trust people. You become paranoid. And it's just this really cool movie. It's got these great scenes, great acting, just great characters. And overall, it's a lot of fun to watch. So I definitely recommend The Signal. And then for my second film, I'm going to talk about a movie. Well, I'm specifically talking about this movie because it is going to be unusual for me to say this. For me to say, you should watch this Uwe Boll film. But it's the truth. Rampage is a really, really decent flick. And I was so surprised to find that there's actually Uwe Boll movies out there, films that I enjoy, that aren't related to video games. Because we all know his video game movies are absolute garbage. But, he has Tunnel Rats, 1968, and Darfur, and Stoic, and a few other movies, Seed, that are actually well-received movies. And Uwe Boll isn't really a bad writer-director unless he's doing a video game movie. I mean, if you've seen Blood Rain or Alone in the Dark, you know what I'm talking about. Dungeon Siege, I mean, geez, you can go on with the list of awful movies he's done, but Rampage is not one of them. Rampage was a surprisingly good film. It's shocking, it's very interesting, and it really keeps you on the edge of your seat. So if you get the chance, check out Rampage, because I think you won't be disappointed, and then you might actually have something good to say about Uwe Boll.
You know that if you took all the slime trails from all the slugs in the world, it would go around the planet 4.5 times. I'm not kidding. Slugs are interesting.
Think I saw the whole thing the how. We think, oh,
Okay, look, Josh, what the man? This is weird. I'm done. Okay, so these are WTF games. Just some of the weirder games we've played. They don't necessarily have to be entirely weird games, but maybe just weird premises or weird moments in games. Just, you know, moments, those WTF moments where you're playing the game and you're like, what's going on?
Yeah, not even necessarily a bad game. Could be an awesome game, but just weird. Just stuff that makes you stop and be like, well, WTF.
Right.
Yeah, so what's your first one?
Oh, my first one, well, I think a lot of people would agree, Seaman for the Dreamcast.
Yes.
Just a very weird game and probably one of my favorite Dreamcast games.
Yeah, it was a really unique premise, and the thing that was weird to me is like when he first started talking to me, he was like, you have the same birthday as royalty, 'cause you have to tell me your birthday, and I was like, what's that mean? I looked it up, I have the same birthday as Prince, and I learned that.
There you go. Well, and I remember one of the first defining moments for that game for me was, he asked me, when's your father's birthday? And then, you know, months down the road, I was still messing with this game, and one day he swims up and he goes, isn't tomorrow your father's birthday? And I'm like, crap, tomorrow's my dad's birthday! It was the craziest thing ever. I loved it. And that just, for me, that was amazing. And Leonard Nimoy did the voice of Seaman, which is just also really weird.
Right. And again, like the face of like Boris Yeltsin, like very strange looking creature to begin with.
Nothing about that game wasn't weird, but it was cool. And also one of the WTF things for me is, why hasn't this game been re-released?
Right.
It's the perfect game for the 3DS.
Oh,
Will someone please listen to me and do a 3DS version of Seaman? We can check our tank, our water, our air pressure, everything right on the...
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's got a microphone. You communicate so easily.
Yeah, it would
with
be
Seaman.
phenomenal. Go ahead. What's yours?
Okay, my first one I'm going to go with is WarioWare micro games. Like, that entire series is absolutely amazing, but it's also incredibly bizarre. Like, I remember the trailer for the first Game Boy Advance installment had, like, a nose, or, like, it was like a nose, and you had to, like, pick the nose with your finger that would move like this.
Yeah.
And, like, that whole series just...
Yeah, just every mini game in it is just weird, and you're doing one weird thing right after the next.
Right, and that's the thing, like, this was during an era, like, when Mario Party was still, well, I mean, it's still a popular franchise, of course, but, you know, those were, like, mini games. Then micro games really was, like, you had 3 seconds to complete each task, or you failed, and you just started, and then they had, like, a little boss battle, just a lot of fun, but way out there.
Yeah.
So.
My next one, Typing of the Dead. Another Dreamcast game that's just really weird. They took House of the Dead, and they made this really cool, like, typing, you know, it's kind of a typing training and a spelling training game, but at the same time, you got zombies coming at you, and you're trying to spell the words as fast as you can, and it's not only odd, but it's very fun, it's exciting, and you're typing.
You're learning a useful
you're
skill.
actually doing something.
Like, it's one of those things where anybody would yell, you'd be like, why are you just playing those silly games? Like, I'm learning to type on a QWERTY keyboard.
right.
It reminds me of, like, there was a Mario teaches typing from like, I think the early 90s, late 80s, and that was actually one of the ways that I learned to type properly. So I was always mad because I never got to play Typing of the Dead, but I always wanted to.
So if you can find the game and the keyboard, you
Yeah.
definitely have to have the keyboard. It's definitely worth playing because it's just so much fun.
If you like horror and you're a secretary, this is the game
This
for
is
you.
the game for you.
So, my next one, I will say, Shaq Fu. Now, I know all of you are thinking instantly, like, this game was horrible, and rightfully so. It was pretty bad.
Pretty bad.
But just, like, to see Shaq looking all mean, like, in like, some martial arts stance on the front of a game, it's just like, that's the first thing that popped in. I was like, what is this? Why is this happening?
And then the characters he fights.
Oh,
in the
yeah.
game. Yeah, just some weird, you know, just a weird, like, gathering of fighters.
Yeah, and I'm only mildly ashamed to say I think I actually had this game or borrowed it from a friend at some point, but I played as the mummy constantly, even though they were all horrible.
Yeah.
It was an awful game.
Also, though, developed by Delphine Software, the company that did Flashback.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, and Out of This World.
Yep.
Yeah, so one of the worst games in the world was developed by one of my favorite developers of all time.
It's tragic. So what's your next one?
Okay, so my last one. It's not a weird game per se, but weird events take place throughout the game consistently, and it's a very it's built up a huge cult following. Eternal Darkness for the GameCube.
Yep.
Just a phenomenal game, but here you are. It's survival horror. You know, it's this cool story. It's you know, everything about this game is great, but you run into a room and then all of a sudden, like, your head falls off, and you're going, "What just happened? My head fell off." And then you find out, oh, this didn't even really happen. My character's still outside the door. You know, and just so many moments in the game that had me freaking out.
Oh
you
yeah.
know, that just. The entire game is a WTF moment after moment after moment.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the thing was, like, when you're talking about, like, when the head falls off, the first time it happened, I was furious because I thought it was just bad game design. I was like, there was nothing that hit me. There's no way this could have happened. And the thing was, like, in addition to just being like really quirky and kind of you constantly had to question your sanity while playing it because so many weird things like that would happen, it was really neat because you would be a different kind of protagonist through the ages. So it wasn't just one character. It was kind of a collection of characters over, like, I think thousands of years even or something like that.
Yeah, it just
really
goes,
quite cool.
Yeah, it spans through generations. And,
Yep.
Yeah, just so cool. Specifically, one of the moments that really got me the best was I walked in and the volume bar on my TV just dropped all the way down, and I freaked out. I threw down the controller. I was like trying to turn my volume up, and then I realized it took me a good while to realize the volume bar on my TV didn't even look like that.
Right,
it was
right.
the game, and I'm like, but it fooled me because it just, you see the volume drop and all the volume drops, and you're going, what? You know.
Dude, it reminded me of the Psycho Mantis fight in Metal Gear Solid 1 when the video flashes out, instead of saying video, it said Hideo, which is like a jab or whatever.
Right.
I don't know. I liked it. I thought it was a good game.
Yeah.
All right, my final one, I will say, and to me, I think this is like the king of WTF games. My personal opinion, you have to let me know if you agree, is anything Katamari Damacy. Like, that game first came out, I believe, on the PS2 around, like, what, 2003, 2004, somewhere in there.
I remember, somewhere around there.
And I remember seeing it, and like, all the reviewers were just like, this is a lot of fun, you should totally check it. I was like, but you're just rolling up random objects into a ball.
How could that possibly be fun?
And it was amazing. It was so good. Like, I remember ping-ponging back and forth.
But then you get into the plot. You get into the story.
Yeah.
And you're just going, what? What are these characters? What's
Right.
going on? It's so bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like that catapulted that whole series to like one of the most memorable or lovable like kind of franchises ever.
Definitely.
So good stuff. So let us know what your WTF games are, the games that make you stop and just kind of freak out for a minute.
Yeah.
All right, so that's all we've got for this week. So thanks so much for watching.
It was a lot of fun. Next week, we're going to talk about the best actors that are the same guy in every movie. And that's just one of the many great segments we'll have next week.
Yep, we'll have more stuff. We just haven't thought of it yet. So make sure you stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe to both of our channels. Thanks so much. Hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, because we're totally there too. And have a great night.
That's it. Okay, look, Josh, what the f, man? This is weird. I'm done.
What? It was good.